Hi, hello, welcome to my channel. I'm Amber, and today I'm going to be sharing with you my wrap up for the month of July. So I already tried making this video, and it was like over an hour long. So I'm trying to be a little bit snappier with my thoughts and my little chat here, but if it is that long, it is that long. Hopefully when I actually do an edit of this, it'll lower that time down. I think there were like moments where I could have edited it and it would have been less, hopefully. But that being said, I just want to talk about what my reading has been like for this year because I haven't made a video since last October. And so I do go through cycles when it comes to my reading. It usually is like 2 months where I am hardcore reading and then I will just completely not read um, for like another 2 months. So it's like it very much cycles, and it's been like this. I think that I never noticed this because I used to, before I started watching BookTube, I would buy or borrow like 5 books at a time, and then I would read them, and then so like so I would always have like a space of time where I probably wasn't reading, between getting the next group of books. So maybe I just never noticed that this was a thing that my brain did, but I started noticing it when I started collecting more books and started um, being part, like watching BookTube and yeah, getting a little bit too influenced by the way, by the ways of booktubers. But that being said, um, it's just something that I've gotten used to. When I would try to force myself to read during the times that my brain didn't want to read, it would just make me dislike the books I was reading even more so than maybe I would have disliked if I had been in the right place for reading. Anyways, so that being said, I in October, at the end of October, if you know the politics of the U.S. or you're part of the U.S., you will know that the elections happened in November, and I think that was when my reading died out. Quite like just because I was in the space of reading, I really wanted to read, and then that happened, and I didn't read again until January. And usually January is my strongest reading um, month of the year. But again, you know, the things that were happening were just, yeah, I couldn't cope. So I did a lot of rereading in the beginning of January. I reread the Brown Sister trilogy and the Love on Madison Island trilogy, which that one is by Becca James, and the Brown Sisters is by Talia Hibbert. And those are like my comfort reads. I go back to them a lot when I am in the need for comfort. Um, and so I just was like, that was just where my headspace was at the beginning of the year. And when I was in my when I was reading in September, October, I was trying to read all the books that were on the Booker Prize long list. So I'm continuing to do that because I had already worked my way through 3 of the list, and I had bought a book that was part of it because I couldn't get it to the library at that time, and I had totally forgot that I think I can request books from the library, if they don't have access to them, and that if you like request library, they will purchase this. I think I've done this like once, and then, I don't know why I felt weird about it. I felt like I was in positioning them or something. It was like it created such a pressure for me to like read the book because I requested it. I don't know. It was like a weird conundrum in my brain when that happened. So I think that's why I forgot about it, because I just didn't want that kind of pressure on me when Anyway, that being said, um, because I bought that book, I've decided that I'm going to continue on with catching up those books, and I've read 2 books so far. One of them I will be talking about when I do talk about the books that I've read, because I read one of them this month, in July, and yeah. So so in for this year, January was just rereading. I did read one book that was like the first time I read that I was like so determined. It was either in January or February, because I thought for sure I would get back into reading. Usually rereading does tend to help me to get back in. But sadly, when I tried the first book that I tried to read, which was Honey Girl, I did not like. And I will just say that I do not like the fact that the person that is the love interest, that she has this like, I don't know if it just feels toxic to me, the way that she talked and acted towards Grace the whole time that they were together. There was just like something odd about it, and I didn't like it because it just didn't like it, how the two kind of like were together. It just didn't feel healthy. And especially when Grace's friend shows up, it it was just like, if she gets jealous and a little possessive, and I'm just here being like, why? You're not really, you're just here trying to get to know each other. Like, you may be technically married, but you're not really married. If you know what I mean. Like, you're just people that legally got married, but you're not a married couple at this point, you know? And I, it felt, and the relationship just felt more like, you know how if you have a pretty good friend group, and then like this one person outside of that friend group comes in after they had gotten to know another person like outside of the friend group, and they try to re-enter they try to enter that friend group, and then they have to like, and then they realize they're confronted with the fact that they don't know that person as much as the other people in this friend group does, and they get jealous. Like, if you've ever experienced that, that's what it feels like to me with this. It felt like this person who thought that they knew this person sees the other friend group and realizes that they don't, and instead of being mature about it, they get jealous and possessive, and that's what it felt like. It didn't feel like a lover situation, it just felt like that, and I was not here for that, especially because the last half of this book is really just talking and dealing with Grace's mental health journey and seeing her go through the process of finding the right therapist and talking about how it can be hard and all these things, and I really appreciate the discussion, but I feel like it gets ruined because they get back together, and in the way that they're talking at the end of this book, she sounds just as toxic, just as the same as she was at the start. I'm here like, it really is ironic that you talk so heavily about mental health care, and it's very clear that the love interest needed health care, mental health care herself, and didn't get it. And I'm just like, is this going to really, like, it's going to hurt and harm her own mental health care by going back to this person who has this very toxic view of relationships and doesn't know how to be in a healthy relationship. So I wasn't here for that. It really kind of ruined my enjoyment of the book at all. Like, I was kind of expecting for it to go where like her marrying this person was part of her mental health crisis moment, and it wasn't just a side product of it. You know what I mean? Like a happy coincidence of like, and no. Anyways, that was like the only one book that I read during the start of the month, that start of the year, that was like, you know, not a reread. But then in April, I did start getting back into reading. I started really feeling like I was stronger when it comes to reading. I reread the first three Heartstopper novels, and I was like, I was ready. I knew I was ready. I was watching BookTube videos again and getting really motivated and inspired by people reading. So in June, I read 19 books. Yeah, I got back into reading my Booker Prize long list from last year. I also was trying to read the International Booker Prize long list, and I've decided not to do that one. I only gave one 3 stars, which I will be talking about here in this video, and then I DNF'd one, which I will be going back to. I think that it was a mistake, not a mistake to DNF it, but it was a mistake to try to read it the way, because my brain was like, I need to read, and I wanted to read as much as I could. I wanted to catch up. My brain just said, you have to catch up, and catch up for lost time. And so it was not the right time for me to be reading that book when my brain was just in fast mode. And then I DNF'd another book, which again I will talk about here, and that one, yeah, again I will talk about. So like, I DNF'd 2 books, and then like A1 and I just like, I don't know how to feel about that, and I'm a little bit worried about what that means for the rest of the books. I do feel like I would enjoy the rest of the more books. I don't know. So like right now, like I'm saying I'm not doing it, but I might go back to it once I finish the Booker Prize list or the other one that I'm doing, which is a women's fiction long list. Like, we already have the winners for both of these, the international and the women's, but I'm still like, I'm just very curious about what it would be like for me to actually have read through all of a prize list. I have my qualms about prize lists, especially because they tend to be very white, tend to be very male centered, and so knowing that there is a prize that is focused on women, it'll be definitely interesting to see. And I do want to read more books that are like translated out of my own country, but again, are these books from just white countries? Like, I know there's at least 2 that are not. That are not from white countries, but majority of them are. And I'm just here being like, we need to get outside of white-centered, you know, white centricity, if that's the right word, way to say that. So anyways, I'm very much wanting to continue on with women's fiction long list. So once I finish the Book of Christ, that will be my focus. But that being said, that has been my reading. June was my best reading month so far. And in July, I read 13 books. These are already enough, but I do have ideas because especially I have like a limit. I have a limit, if you want to say, like, if the book is 300, if it's in like the 300s or less, 50 pages is enough to know if you're going to enjoy the book or get something out of it. You know, because if you've read it long enough, you're going to know what your taste is like for books. And if it's longer than that, it's 100 to 150, depending on how long the book is. But for like a couple of these books, I read like half of the book before I decided to be enough. And I could have done it like much sooner than I did. But that being said, let's just get into the books that I have read this month. Oh, before I do that, it is actually the 29th, so we have like 3 days left, and I know I will be finishing the book, but I want to do these videos differently, and I'm hoping that it will work to do so, because I don't want to do this one like solid video of me just talking like this anymore, and also that would mean I won't be like making like a video like what the what I don't, this was gonna be too much. When I tried to make this video, I think I already told you this, it was over an hour long. And if I'm reading about the same level this coming month as I am this month, it's gonna be too much for me. So I'm gonna be doing something different, and you'll see what that is when I get to that video. But yeah, but again, let's get back into what this video is supposed to be about. So 13 books that I read this month. The first one being Vagabond by Olagoja Osunde. And for this one, I am not really sure how to talk about it, because it is it's a definitely a unique read for me, because the way that it's structured and the way that this author talks about what they want to talk about. I'm sorry. The way that the author writes the story and its characters, it's almost like a short story collection, but it's not, because it does lead you somewhere. Although I will say that I will understand why people have said that they don't like this book, because you don't really see where it's leading until like the very end of the book. So it can be something that you might not enjoy because of that, but because this is a book centered on vagabonds, which in the definition that she gives you at the very beginning of the book, it's people who were feared, yes, people who were deemed other, who people in society don't feel like should exist, that kind of thing. And so each of these groups of people or person that you see are dealing with what it's like to be that vagabond. And at the beginning of each section, you have the spirit who worked or works for a god telling the story. And I'm pretty sure it's worked, because I'm going to be able to tell the story otherwise. So he talks about the god. He talks about certain things. And I really think that if this author was talking about, and the way that it was written wasn't so powerful and meaningful to me, I think that I would have had an issue with the book in general, because I don't like short story collections, and you could almost say this is a short story collection, because although they are connected, but they're all living in Nigeria, they're all vagabonds, and it does go somewhere at the end. The fact that it takes until the end can be seen as a negative, and I very much understand why. But anyway, I just loved it, and this is a book I will be buying and reading at some point. But I wanted to give you a little bit of an idea of the way that the book is written. So I have a couple of quotes, and the first one is, "Know this: for every law made, there are always people who are under it and people who are above it. At a certain point, the city no longer has absolute power, can no longer fight for you. And because nothing in this life is free, especially freedom, some will be able to afford it, many will not." Also, there's this one. "What I will also say is that women are magicians. I don't mean magic like the kind you were warned to avoid. I mean magic as in spinning story as lifeline, as in turning a wound to a star, as in holding an apocalypse in your core and smiling believably. And the last one I will say, take it from me, hard-boiled as it is, there are cracks in power that can be crawled through. And if there's anything vagabonds know how to do, it's to live in the cracks, to grow tall and thick as unfellable trees. That one is my favorite. I absolutely loved that one so much. And then, so I gave the book 5 stars. Again, I understand why people may not like this book. It is a book that can be difficult to read because it doesn't like hold to a structure, to a typical structure that we typically would read. And I really appreciate that they didn't try to like fit into what the typical structure of storytelling would be. They did their own thing with their writing, and I think it was set up for what they were doing, what they were trying to do. It worked very much so. So 5 stars for Vagabonds. Then the next book I read was a DNF, and that was Heartland by Banu Mushtaq. This was the first book that I tried to read for the International Prize Longlist, and the reason why I DNF'd it was because it is short stories. I'm curious what people think about this because can you compare short stories with full-length novels? I just find it interesting that these were included in this prize when these are short stories and it's being held up alongside full-length novels. It's like they're both doing different things. I don't know how to. I'm overthinking it, I think. But anyway, I don't really like short story collections, and the topics that this author was was dealing with, were just a little bit too heavy for my brain at that moment. So I think that at a different time, if I wasn't, if I was a short story collection reader, that enjoyed short stories, this would have been a book for me. I still think about that first story. Like it's definitely hard hitting. I was just finding myself being dragged down by it too much. So I think it's something that I will go back to and maybe just read a story a month or something because it's just a lot. It is a lot. But yeah, I didn't have it for now. The next book was My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante, and with this one, I found it very interesting, very much interesting and intriguing read for me, just because of these two women's friendship. So, anyways, this is about Elena and Lila. At the beginning of at the very start of this book, you're introduced to Elena as an older woman who has lived a pretty full life. And I don't know if she's elderly or not. We just know that she's older. She's older than what Anyways, but that's beside the point. She gets a call from Lila, her best friend's son, saying that she's disappeared. She comes to realize that she has fulfilled her part of actually disappearing. And because of this, she's like, I'm going to write our story. So this is the first book of 4 books talking about their friendship growing up. So the first book is from their childhood when they first start becoming friends up to when they're 16 years old. And what I find so interesting about seeing this relationship, because it's told solely by Elena, is seeing Elena talking about how they're competing with each other. Like she's constantly thinking that they're competing when I just think that Lila is just wanting to escape. Even when like she just wants to be there. She wants to escape from this life. She wants her education. She wants to go off to high school and college and all these things. And it's interesting because I think that Layla understands on some level that Lila is able to learn and gather knowledge in a better way than she can. Like it for Elena, it feels more like work and she has to actually work for it, whereas Lila, it seems to come more naturally for her. And so it's interesting because she feels so frustrated with it. I think Elena is so caught up in this idea that they're competing that she can't see beyond it to realize that Layla just wants to escape. Yet we do know that this is Elena writing this as an older person who's looking back at it. So on some level, we are seeing that older person talking about this. And so we, as a reader, know that we can see through the story that Lila is just wanting to make something better for her life. And she is trapped by family that doesn't understand why a woman would need to have that education. Why would they need to leave their home? Why wouldn't they want to get married at 16 years old? But anyway, it's just, I just found it so very intriguing. I don't hear a lot of people talk about this aspect of it, but I just found it very intriguing to see how Elena views this relationship as a competition almost. And here's a couple quotes that I really loved. And I think the first one really kind of shows you what their lives were like growing up. And it is, I feel no nostalgia for our childhood. It was full of violence. Every sort of thing happened, at home and outside, every day. But I don't really have ever thought that the life we had there was particularly bad. And we do see that violence play out within their lives, outside of their own personal lives. And yet we see them living their lives as best as they can through it all. And this is post-war Spain, so you're seeing a lot of like the impacts on this town of from that war. You know, they're trying to piece things back together after. So there is that. But this one quote I feel is very timely and very much, again, just timely, I think. And it says, and they thought that what had happened before was past, and in order to live quietly, they placed a stone on top of it, and so without knowing it, they continued it. They were immersed in the things of before, and we kept them inside us too. It's just the past impacts our present constantly, and we're seeing this right now. And if you continue to ignore it, we're going to continue to repeat history. And I'm just like, it lives inside of us. The past lives inside of us. And if we continue to ignore it, it's going to be a stone that just breaks everything. And we're seeing that breaking. We're seeing the stone walloping us right now in the US. And so I found it really heartbreaking, the fact that Elena, who didn't seem to care as much about her education, she only cared about like being one step ahead of Lila, I mean, she didn't really seem to care that much if she left her town or what have you. I think she did want to, but I don't think that it was on the level of desperation that it was for Lila. And so it's kind of sad to see that Elena's the one that ends up being able to further her education, to leave and step outside of it, but while Lila is stuck. In this situation in this life that she did not want. And also the fact, I don't know. I don't know. She actually names her child, her brother, Lila does, a name by her. And I'm here being like, why? You're so stuck with this idea that he fought for you, but I just feel like he chose to use you as a way to pick a fight with his father. And that was all it was. But that's just my opinion on that. But I really found it interesting. I did give it 4 stars. It's a good, interesting read that kept me hooked for the most part. But I did find the book started to drag. It was a little bit too long. By the time that we got to the end, I found myself wanting it to be done. So I thought that the book needed to be shortened down a little bit. On some level, I think. I don't know if it could have been, but I just found it dragging. And when I tried to pick up the next book, I realized that there was just no way that I could read the second book at this point without myself just liking it, because I just knew that it's gonna have that same element, and this next book would be even longer than that one. So I just decided that not to continue on for now. I will at some point read it, but I know that now is not time for it. Moving on, we have A Leopard Skin Hat by Anne Sear, translated by Mark Hutchinson. And this one is, I think, a novella. It was quite short. About this man who's only known as the narrator and his complicated friendship with Fanny, who has multiple mental illnesses, according to the synopsis, and we don't really find out what those mental illnesses are. We do know that she kind of feels outside of herself in a way, like she has lost a part of like that part of herself that she once knew. and it's really just interesting to see. So like I have a lot of like quotes here of just talking about like Fanny, like the way that she is, like about her like when she pilfered the leopard skin hat, um, and how it says she would tell you about the theft with the amused and somewhat shamefaced air of a little girl, and were she to put on the hat, would resemble the woman she might have been had her clenched belly, her often uninhabited body, and her sluggish hand now denied her entry to the cheerful, straightforward world we all of us inhabit, regardless of our afflictions. And the one quote that I feel like really captures how the narrator and her relationship is. To be friends with Fanny is to move ceaselessly back and forth between solitude and company, without ever knowing when you will find yourself alone and when there will be two of you. And I think that if you're a care provider on some level, you will understand that sense of being alone but being with somebody, and how that can like shift in those moments of like just like imagine somebody who has Alzheimer's or dementia, and having to care for somebody who has that. I just think that that also can play a part in that too, because like you're seeing somebody lose parts of themselves, and there are moments when that person is going to come back to you. So anyways, it was a very interesting look at a complicated friendship, a friendship where these two separated from just, I think, the natural course of life, where they they became adults, their lives paths just veered off in different directions at the moment, and then he moves back to where they originally lived, and they re-sparked their friendship again, and it's just seeing his love and care for her, and the complicated and complexity of it all, because he ends up kind of being a care provider for her in a lot of ways because of her being mentally ill. And also, the author herself wrote this in the aftermath of somebody that she cared for dying. So there is that part. But what I will say is that the book did feel a little bit too long for how short it was. It did become a little bit too long. I think a lot of that had to do with it did become a little bit repetitive towards the end. And and so because of that, it felt like the book dragged on a little bit at the end. But I did find it very encapsulating, and I think this is a book I will reread just to see if because I did not know about the author, and what drew her to write this book and everything. So I'm curious if that would have changed my reading experience if I had known that beforehand. Then I read Icebreaker, and I do not know. I can't pause this to look up, but I do not know the author's name right off the top of my head. I did not write the author's name down, and I did not write a review about it, which I thought I would have, but I didn't. So I apologize. All the books will be down in the description with the author's name and links to Strikeout, so you can look the books up yourself. That being said, Icebreaker is a book about these two freshmen, college freshmen, who are rivals on the ice. They're both hockey players, and they're rivals because in the same team, by the way, for the first draft pick. I am not a hockey fan. I don't know nothing about hockey, and I am not a sports person. So I don't know why I picked this book up. But I have like read books and that have like sports somewhere in it. At least I thought I had, and I thought that if the romance was good enough, it would you know make up for not my enjoying them so much the hockey. But the hockey plays such a huge part of this that it almost overtakes the romance in a way. And I gotta say that I really did not like the rivalry between the two. It made me so angry at both of them because they're just being complete assholes to one another. And I was just like, ooh, at both of them. Um, but that being said, I understand both sides of it. But here's the thing. So there's a romance obviously between these two. They end up falling for each other. But also the protagonist or the narrator of the story, he's dealing with depression, and that plays a heavy role in this story. And I don't know how I feel about that better, because I'm kind of expecting and kind of hoping that by the halfway point of this book, we would have like seen him like really start working through uh his, the depression, like in the sense of like we were seeing him going to therapy, we're seeing him decide if he needs and wants to take medicine to help him, round out the chemicals and all that stuff. Like I was kind of expecting to see like more of that journey through getting to find your ground again and like finding stability in your mental health. And I kind of found it frustrating, but also just realistic. Like you know that you have depression, you know you're struggling with it, but you just find it even hard just to like get out there and do what you need to do to like. But he also doesn't talk about how hard it can be, even if you are privileged, which he is. He's privileged. He's white. He comes from money. He is privileged in a lot of those ways, so it would probably be easier for him. But it can be hard just for personality wise. I just wanted more discussion around the journey to the right therapist, what that would look like, what that can look like for different people. And I kind of was expecting that, and we don't get that. And we don't, and everything kind of like comes together like right at the end of the book, which I feel like is so typical of YA novels. Um, but I don't know how I feel about that part. And I just by myself, like, I enjoyed the romance overall. I really liked these two boys and how they end up falling in love with each other. But I did not, I just felt like everything when it comes to like the mental health aspect, just kind of like came together and was resolved on some level. Um, really started to be resolved like right at the end of the book. And I was just here being like, well, and then the other aspect that really kind of pissed me off, I guess, because I get tired of the narrative that we have to forgive family that have caused us harm. And here's the thing: his father basically, not just basically, he did it. He abandoned him. He, throughout the whole majority of this book, this this college age student, he's an adult, talks about how his father like basically has nothing to do with him. Really, he only sees him as somebody to carry on the name maybe when it comes to hockey. And it almost feels like he does not really enjoy hockey all that much. And I was kind of expecting that by the end of the book, he'd say, I do not want to play hockey. And that would have been also a way to resolve the whole draft pick thing issue. And I kind of wanted it to be that way because throughout this book, it really feels like his depression kind of played a part in him being disconnected from hockey. But it's like, it felt more like he enjoyed playing hockey, but he doesn't love it. And a lot of that I think has to do because his father put so much pressure on him to play hockey, to carry the nave, that's why he was so determined. And it wasn't that he actually loved hockey and wanted to continue on in this. And that was the vibe that I'm getting for the most of the book. And then all of a sudden at the end he's like, well, I do. I'm like, really? Did you? I don't know. It felt like this was coming from my father rather than from you. And I just didn't want that. Like, and the father turned to him. He had nothing to do with him, didn't really talk to him at all. And then all of a sudden, because now he's in college, he wants to talk to him. He wants to connect. And the one sister that actually like lived with the father and whose relationship is completely different than his throughout the entire book is like constantly telling him like, oh, you need to like talk to that. But you need to give him a chance. And I'm like, you weren't the one that was abandoned by him. He doesn't have to forgive his father for that. He doesn't have to try to make a relationship with him if he's not willing to make the effort for it, and also if he doesn't want to. It's like accept the fact that your relationships are different and with the father, and that if he does not want to forgive and create a relationship with the father, that's his choice, and it is fine. It is fully fine and fully healthy for him to decide what is best for him and his own mental health. Um, and that could be disowning the father. Because I'm sorry, he chose to not create a relationship. It is the father's responsibility. I'm sorry, he's the parent. He should have been a parent, and he was not. He pumped that off onto another family. And he talks about this throughout the book. That family was more his family than his father ever was. All these things. And that he talks heavily about that when they moved and he had his house, that he never even like he didn't even have like a room in that house. And when he like decides that he's going to stay for him over summer, um, over the next summer for Christmas, I was really hoping that there would be a surprise. Oh, he actually had a room for you. But no, he didn't have a room for him. So this whole time, he didn't even create space for his child in his own home. I was really disappointed and disgusted by that. And the way that the sister, it wants to act so hoity-toity, me like, not hoity-toity, but it was just so awful about the whole situation and making it out like he's being an asshole. I'm sorry, but the father's the asshole. He wasn't even willing to like make sure that his son knew that he had a place in his home if he wanted to come come there. Like, give me a break. I'm just tired of this narrative that we need to forgive and give people second and third and fourth chances because they're family. No, no. His father like literally abandoned him, and even when he tried to like give it, you find out that he didn't even like make space for him in the house. I would have been pissed off about that. Like, I think that this kid is just being too forgiving. Um, and I'm tired of that narrative. You don't have to forgive someone just because they're family. If you actually are choosing to forgive and you want to reconnect and you think that reconnecting is not going to be harmful to you, then go ahead. But that's fine. But there was no acknowledgement of that in the story of like he could have, chosen and everything he did forgave. And I'm here being like, but did you really need to? Because he clearly didn't even seem to care to make space for you in his own home, in the home that should have been also your home too. Um, but yeah, so I just don't like that narrative. It really bothers me. And what I was actually hoping and kind of almost expecting was that the team, because it kind of leads you into this too, I think. But what I was expecting was that the team was going to see that he was suffering mentally, like depression, and that they were going to actually help him to find resources to help him with depression, like help him with getting therapy, all that, and that they would become his found family. That would have like created this deep bond within this team. They would have been like his family, and that was what I was hoping for, because that would have made more sense than him reconnecting to a father who barely who's half-assing it, didn't seem to care enough to make sure that he knew that he belonged in his home on any level. So. Yeah, it gets 3 stars. I enjoyed the romance, but it just was dissatisfactory in all the ways that I felt counted. Uh, Moving on, the next book I read and DNF'd was The Ministry of Time by Kayleen Bradley. So this is like a mix of sci-fi, romance, thriller. I would say that the romance is very light. I feel like I think I read like half of this book, and by that point, I was like, I feel like by this point I should have had an idea of the romance, and there's nothing to it. But anyways, this book is about, in the near future, they have discovered time travel, and who cares about the moral ethical qualms about it? They're like, we're going to experiment by taking people who are going to die anyways from different times in the past, bring them to the present, and have people that are called bridges live with them for the year to acclimatize to the present day, while they do tests and like study how they're physically and mentally acclimatizing to present day, like how is time travel affecting them physically and all this jazz. And we don't know the narrator's this bridge's name for most of the book, I think, and you do find out why. I did read like the end of the book to figure out like this thing, and my issue with the book is, one, I don't like the narrative. Two, even if I did like the narrative, I could not like connect on any level with the story or her. Like, she did not care about the moral and ethical qualms. Like, she understood what they were and understood that it was wrong, but she didn't care because I'm making money. Like, I got a good job, good paying job, but I don't really care to fight against this or to quit or anything. Like, nothing. Even at the end, I don't think that she even cared. Like, the way that she talks, it's more of like she regrets the fact that it caused the person that she was the bridge for to dislike her, to leave her, but she doesn't really care enough about the moral and ethical qualms of what her actions caused all the things. And I'm just here being like, it didn't go anywhere. It basically stayed the same then. And I don't I found myself really bored. If anything, this was just snapshots of these two people trying to deal with their differences when it comes to the fact that one is coming from the past where slavery was deemed acceptable by the majority, by the white class and by the majority of white people, and also just the misogyny of it all, and trying to like her trying to like find ways to like educate him without putting too much effort in. Basically, like she just wanted to like have ass her job, because she didn't really care. That's what I thought about it, and it's just snapshots of moments with these two through the years, through the year, and like we do see like hints of like the third aspect to this time, but she couldn't give a shit. She saw something and she was like, whatever, did not care. I just feel, then why do I care about this book? If you don't care, why should I care about this book? That is boring. And I was like, I really don't understand how this even got on that prize list, because I was just like, nothing about this book was satisfactory or worked at any level for me. Um, then I tried to read Pride and Preston Lynn. This is a modern day retelling of um, Pride and Prejudice. Even with the title, I feel like she lacks subtlety when it comes to giving you the parallels between Pride and Prejudice and this book. But that's just because this is the idea of this book, if I didn't say this already. So this is a modern day retelling of Pride and Prejudice, and it's the families that are involved are all Chinese Americans living in San Francisco. And you're introduced to Lizzie, who is a college student working two jobs to make her way through college. And one of the jobs that she works at is the restaurant of her aunt and uncle, and I believe that they are her guardians. And Preston, his mom, his friend, and his friend's sister end up at the restaurant on one of the busiest days, and she accidentally serves the sister a dish that has food in it that she is deadly allergic to. And because of this mistake, Preston writes an article that causes a bit of problems for the restaurant, and it's really just about like her dealing with the consequences of like this. I really got so pissed off because I hated Lizzie so much in this book, and I just don't know. I wish that the conflict of like this was not this, because it's not comparable. You can't compare somebody who just misunderstood someone's character and like judge somebody wrongly, because even if they ended up not getting together at the end and able to like overcome their preconceived ideas of one another, there was no physical harm done to anybody in the process of this. Like, you know what I mean? Whereas Lizzie literally caused physical harm to another person, and on top of that, could not at all take responsibility for what she did. And here's the thing. So when this happens, the author makes a big deal about talking about how the restaurant is like super busy. I think they're understaffed to a point, and so she's having to like take on more than what she would normally have to deal with. And I get it. I get that it is very stressful and hard, and a mistake could happen. But if it would have just been like that, I would have been like, okay, I understand it. But when she is taking their order, they do very right at the beginning tell her that the sister has an allergy, but she doesn't seem to take it seriously. She doesn't seem to care enough to like pause and be like, okay, and go through the menu with her. Like she doesn't do any of the things that I would expect a server to do when someone like tells you that they have a specific allergy, and guide them to the right dish and away from certain dishes, so that they would know what dish. No, the whole time from like the very start, she is flirting with Preston. So she is distracted by her flirting with Preston. So she has no good excuse for why she didn't make sure that this person didn't get a dish that had the food item that would cause this. And the only reason why she didn't end up in the hospital is because her one of her coworkers had, I don't know what they called it, but had the thing that helped stop the allergy from getting worse. She could have ended up in the hospital. She could have ended up dead, because it was a very serious allergy. And even if it's a minor allergy, you should still take it seriously. An allergy is an allergy, and if someone tells you that they have an allergy, you should take it seriously enough to make sure that you're not going to cause harm in on any level to this person. Like, it can be traumatic, I am sure, for somebody who has an allergy to experience that allergy reaction, especially if it's like super serious. And so I just, and then the way that she reacts to this afterwards, like, she does apologize and like does it, and I recognize that she recognizes that she made a mistake, but she doesn't seem to care or recognize that it was how serious it actually could have been. Like, she has herself like fake fired, and I'm like, this could have been a fireable offense, because especially because if she had ended up in the hospital, your aunt and uncle would have been financially responsible for that because you caused her to go into hospital. They could have sued them if she had ended up in the hospital. Like, there could have been financial consequences to your aunts and uncle's business just from your actions in general. And she doesn't seem to understand or care about that. And even when her friend the next day tells her, she could have died from this, but she's like, but she did it. And I'm like, oh my God, you sound like such a fucking child. Take responsibility for your actions. And on top of that, with the article that he writes, I'm here like, the majority of this article is actually makes sense and is reasonable. And because he talks about how restaurants should be taking allergies more seriously, and that there is a dearth of restaurants and businesses that don't seem to take allergies seriously, which causes harm. And also on top of that, that servers should have a good enough understanding of their menus to be able to help guide the diners away and towards dishes that are not going to have those items in it that are going to cause an allergic reaction. And I'm like, I fully agree. Like, 100% on his side on this, and I don't think I'm supposed to be. Because he does mention the restaurant by name. He does talk about that. I can understand on some level that, like, yeah, he could have at least mentioned that she was fired, because I don't know if he knew that it was a fake firing or not. I'm curious. I'm very curious if he did. I would not be surprised if he did know that it was a fake firing. But yeah, and also, it feels almost like she wants to be like, well, the mom was just being so rude and snobby to me and blah blah blah, and like that's enough of a reason for you to take what you did so lightly. Like, the mom was barely snobby, and I feel like the way that she talked about it was like she had been working at this restaurant for a while, and I know it can be stressful, and I understand how hard. Well, I don't understand because I have not had to work in restaurants, but hearing people talk about their experiences working, I can empathize that it can be hard to work in these jobs, and it can be stressful, and mistakes can happen, and I understand that. But if you had time to flirt with Preston, you had time to do your job well enough to make sure that this didn't happen. And also, I feel like if you've been working long enough, you would have grown enough thick of a skin to deal with very light, snobby comments. Like, it is something that I think that you could have just rolled your eyes at behind her back and made a joke about with your coworkers and just moved on. So there's just not enough reason for how you can't compare that. You can't compare her being snobby to you really physically causing someone harm. Like, even if it was a minor reaction, you're still causing someone harm by having given them a dish that they were allergic to. So I didn't like the way that she acted. Did not like the way that she wasn't willing to take any kind of responsibility. I will be curious if you finish this book, does she ever actually take any kind of responsibility for this at the end? I just think that she understands, like, even if she does, like, on some level take responsibility for actions, she does understand that she could have caused harm, because her friends literally right at the beginning tell her that she could have killed her, and she does not care. It's like, as long as she didn't actually die, what's the matter? But you caused her harm, you caused trauma to another person, you caused physical harm to another person, and you don't care about that? It's the same mentality as people who don't wear masks, because even if you really believe that the pandemic is over, you know that wearing masks prevents you from getting sick, which therefore prevents. And even if you did get sick, it would 100% prevent you from causing another person physical harm. And the fact that so many people have decided that they don't care. They get sick, they don't care. It's the same mentality. It's the same mentality. Like, you don't care because it doesn't affect you. Why should I care if it affects others? It's a typical mentality. Like even if you truly believe that the pandemic is over, even though hundreds of people are dying every day from COVID, we know for a fact that masks are an effective way of lowering illnesses and that it prevents you from spreading your germs to other people. And it does not prevent you from being able to go to movie theaters, from going to your bookstores or traveling or any of that. You can live your life while being safe. Anyways, that is beside the point. Well, it is the point, but it's beside the point of the book. That being said, on a lesser issue side, this book reads quite young. I don't know if it was made worse because I was reading it as an audiobook, but I did see several people talk about how they thought this was an adult novel, and I thought it was an adult novel, but it reads more like a YA novel. And I don't know if this author has written other books, and maybe it's because she started out as a YA author, and this is her first attempt at an adult novel. I don't know. Also, I did see somebody mention that she made a mistake when it came to Charlotte from the original book, and that she says that Charlotte didn't have a brother, but apparently she does. I don't know if that's the case or not because I don't remember that. I'm like literally reading the book right now. I'm like buddy reading that with somebody else, and I don't remember that being mentioned that she had a brother, but I wasn't fully paying attention to that aspect. Like it was just kind of like something that went in and out of my head. So it's possible that it was mentioned that she had a brother, but I don't know if that's 100% the case. So you can tell me if you've read that book and you know for sure. Let me know because I'm not 100% sure about that. But if that is the case, yeah, I would say I would agree with those reviewers because if you're going to directly reference characters or another book, you should at least have the facts accurate, of things accurate. Like it should be accurate. But yeah, I took major issue with that aspect, and I was like, oh, I know that there's just no way that I can get past my dislike of Lizzie, and I'm just here being like, I don't think I'm supposed to dislike her. I'm supposed to sympathize with her on some level. I can't find sympathy for somebody who would cause someone else physical harm and doesn't seem to take it seriously, the harm that she could have and did and could have caused. But anyways, that is that. I also ended up sadly DNFing The Weaver and the Witch Queen by Genevieve Bronashek. I read halfway through this book before DNFing, but that's just what this is about. So this is about Ani and Gunhild, who are childhood best friends. Gunhild is dealing with an abusive mother. Ani is rather Gunhild's dealing with an abusive mother and desperate to leave their village, wants to find a way to escape. And Ani, on the other hand, is okay staying. She's happy to stay there, become a healer like her mom. And then one day, Ani, Ani's sister, and Gunhild gets this ominous prophecy from a wise woman / witch / seer, which is what they're most commonly known as, saying that one of their futures will cloud the others, and because of this, these three make a blood oath that they will always be there for one another. And then several years later, a Viking raid happens, and in the process of this Viking raid, Ani and Signy's village gets destroyed. Everybody that they know is killed, and Signy gets kidnapped by these raiders, and Ani barely escapes with her life. And so she's trying to find a way to rescue her sister, and at the same time we have Gunhild, who we have found out has become a witch herself, and she's trying to make her way back to Ani to help her rescue Signy, and she ends up tying her fate with this king who is the heir apparent to the throne of Norway. Now, I read like halfway through this book, and I will say that it really felt like everything was happening, but nothing was happening at the same time. We're going nowhere quick kind of thing. And I couldn't fully understand what my issues with the book were, but and so like halfway through the book, I decided to read reviews. I knew that I was having issues because I was seeing inklings of romance come into play, and I was just like, no, no, I didn't want romance. I wanted this book about these two women and the sisterhood, and this is what the synopsis makes you read is about these two women and their sisterhood and the bonds and their sisterhood bonds, but instead it's not that at all. So I read several reviews. I looked to the end of the book to see where this book leads, and it's literally a hate to love romance between Oddný and Haldor and Gunhild and the king, and because of their choosing these men, it breaks up their relationship and their friendship. And I'm here being like, how is this feminist? It's like you decided to ruin your friendship over men that you clearly hate. Like, I'm sorry, like for the majority of this book, Gunhild hated the king, and I say rightfully so because he had killed a witch, and this witch, and the reason why he agrees to help her is because she chose to help him to protect his men from this witch. And when she finds out why, she literally tells him that if she was that witch, she would be going after him too. And so like she hates him, and the only reason why she chooses to marry him is at the beginning is like for power. And I'm like, I'll here for that because she was by doing that, taking control of her life, taking agency over her life and her future. And I was here for that. And also she was using that as a way um to help save Signy. So I was here for that, you know. But instead she ends up falling in love with the guy. Like, really? And then with Oddný, I'm even less understanding of it because Haldor, the man that she ends up falling in love with, is one of the men responsible for the destruction of her village and the death of her people and family. I'm here and be like, what? What? And baseline, I was kind of like bored with the story because I just felt like it was just a lot of like them talking about what they were planning to do and just like not really doing nothing was like just really happening. And I'm like, I'm halfway through this book and I don't feel like much of anything was really happening. And then I just I I really could not enjoy a book where I thought it was supposed to be about the sisterhood bonds, and instead it turns into a romance that I was not here for. Um, that being said, I heard that there was trans representation. I don't know if the character is trans or if the historical person is trans because um, the people that are in the story are people that actually existed at one point in reality. So I get that. But so I don't know if the person just was trans in reality or if this was just a person that she created that is trans. But the only little bit of like transvestation that I got, I don't even know if you can consider that because there are men who may not be able to grow beards, who are assigned male at birth, who may not have, I think, who don't grow beards easily, who are on the smaller side. So like I don't know like if that was enough because like that was like bare mention of like of like I'm pretty sure that Haldor is the one that is trans, that's supposed to be trans, and like the only mention that you could like maybe possibly see as being transness is the fact that it's mentioned that he's shorter than the average man. Um, he doesn't. He hasn't been able to grow a beard. I don't know how we would know that. Just because he doesn't have a beard doesn't mean that he couldn't grow a beard. But okay, um, I don't know. So I'm just like here being like, I don't know if that is enough for me to be like, is that trans representation? I wouldn't know. And so like she does mention in the author notes that she did have sensitivity readers there. So like maybe it actually talked about in a more direct way about this. and I was kind of, that's what was keeping me in, because I wanted to see like when Ani and Ani and Halder actually like start connecting, if that is brought up in any way. So like let me know if that is actually like brought up in any like direct way. I don't think it needs to be talked about in a direct way for it to be transrepresentation, but I'm like, is that enough to like warrant it being transrep? Because would you know that that was transrep if that was like the only thing that was mentioned of the character? That's just that's just where I'm just like, I question it, but I'm not, it's not negative or positive. I'm just like, I'm not sure about it. So like if you finish this book, let me know if it that representation is developed more further out in any way, and what you would think if that was like the basics of it. But yeah, so I ended up DNFing it halfway through. Then the next book I read was Held by Anne Michaels, and this book, what I will say is, it is a meditation of the past, and its presence in our present life. And like one of the first quotes that I got here is on the very first page too. The past exists as a present moment, and that is what this book is really about. It's talking about how the past is always there, it's always existing there. And in the synopsis tells you that in 1917 you meet John, who is fighting to stay awake and stay alive while he is stuck in falling snow after a blast that caused harm to his leg in some way, damage to his leg, and he can't stand up. And so because of this, he's just kind of like lost in his memories. And then in 1920, we see him back home from the war, reconnecting with Helena, reopening his Photoshop, and as he starts taking pictures, rather portraits of people, he starts seeing ghosts popping up next to these people, and it goes from there. Where from there we see people, the child of this couple, and then the next generations and such, and how the past becomes a present moment in their lives. And I really enjoyed like looking at this meditation of the past. I will say that the ending was a little big to me, because it ends with like this kind of like stalker vibe situation, and also I didn't understand why Marie Curie ended up in the story at all. Like I liked her chapters and like what was being said through it, but I didn't see the connection to the rest of the characters in this book. Like everybody else had in some way, somebody connects back to John in some way, and so that in that way that you can see, and I felt like she was very much wanting to like connect these people in that way. But I was here being like, okay, but why is Marie Curie here? Why is Marie Curie here? There's like the bare minimum of a connection, because a friend of other people that are like directly connected to John is there, but it's like one little snippet. So I didn't understand what was going to occur there. But that being said, there were like a lot of like strong moments here, and I can understand why this ended up as on the short list. I think it was on the short list of the Booker Prize. So that being said, there is a couple quotes here that I wanted to share with you. Or rather one maybe, I think. Oh no, two actually, yes. Two. And so the first one is, with every tightening of the screw, the tyrant makes our hope more precise, and nothing enrages a tyrant more than hope. Very timely, I think, considering everything. And then the last one is, that there might be, in the abstract world, in the domain of the dead, the remnant of desire. The persistence of longing in a phantom body, to feel an apple in the hand, to feel the heat of the sun and the cold of the sea, to taste the salt of the sea and the lips of another, to be opened and held. So I definitely see how people may not like this book, because it very much leans into her poetic side. The majority of the books that she has published are poetry, so definitely this is a book that leans into that side of her. It lacks a plot. I would say even it lacks lacks being a character study. It's more of just looking at the past and meditating on that through these people. But I can definitely understand like So I definitely understand why people would take issue with this book, because if you're not somebody that enjoys poetry, this might be a negative for you. And also, it doesn't have like a plot. And it's kind of just like little snapshots of things. But the theme of the book is past. And again, the past exists at the present moment is very much what this book is talking about and meditating on. So I gave that one 4 stars. I really appreciated what it was. And then you have Tears of Amber by Sofia Segovia. Now with this book, I have a lot of different thoughts on this. I think that I regret reading the synopsis right before I picked this book up, because it misled me to believe that these two families were going to connect earlier than they do, and that it was going to be about these two families who were escaping war, kind of like them intersecting and trying to survive the rest of the time war together, and that's not at all what it is. So what this book is really about is about these two different families who are living in what was known as Prussia at the time. Now, I will say that I was very much confused by this, because I thought, because of Prussia, because of the P and Russia, that it was Poland and Russia, a combination of that, and so that it would have been between Poland and Russia, like, but apparently it's actually part of Germany, and so it's on the border of Germany and Poland. Okay, so I had to look at multiple maps to like get that solidified in my brain. So these are German families. So anyway, you have Ilse, who is 3 years old, and her family, who are farmers, living like very close to the border, I think, between Prussia and Poland, and they're forced to have Polish prisoners working their farm, and one of them is Janusz, that who Ilse befriends, and he loves to tell her these stories. They're like fantastical, and when they end up escaping, he uses the stories to keep her going and everything. And then you also have Arno, who is, I believe, like 4 years old when the story starts, and they live more inner, like in on the inner side of Prussia, and so I was less interested in Arno, more because of the father, because the father actually voted for Hitler, and like we're seeing how this family deals with surviving this war, because the father ends up being conscripted into the military, and the mother and the son ends up having to escape, and they escape into trying to survive in this mansion. And one of the people that the father worked for, he was a comforter, and then he would, do the comforting job with the person, and they went and like stayed in the mansion that she used to live in. At a point. So it's really just about these two people, these two families, dealing with the moral and ethical qualms of what was going on at the time, and then also trying to survive the war, and everything like that. So I found Carl and like what he was going through most interesting, because I can see a lot of parallels to certain things, and I will read this, because he's talking about, like, he talks about how his father warned him against Hitler. He couldn't understand why, because he was making all these promises of like, oh, he was gonna like make Germany prosperous and all these things, and this is what he says. And yes, now he would ask for forgiveness and gladly admit that he'd believed what he'd wanted to believe, that he heard that marvelous speech, but understood what he'd wanted to understand, ignoring inconvenient truths, seduced by the promise of a full larder and full pockets. And doesn't this make you think of people who are Trump supporters, specifically in the first election? Like, if you chose to vote for Trump a second time, you knew exactly what you were voting for. You knew exactly, and you didn't give a shit about the harm that your choice was going to cause to the country and to the people existing in this country. But the first time, it, like, if you were paying attention to people talking about this, like, you would know that they talked about how they regretted their votes after the fact, because they were seduced. they were lied to and they believed the lies, and or they just ignored the truth because of the things that they wanted, you know, to believe. And so it's interesting. It's interesting to like see this play out here, and I'm very curious if this author was trying to draw these parallels because this book was published, I think, in 2020. So it's definitely something that I think that she was like drawn to talking about in that way, considering what was going on at that time too. Um, and there's like this other thing, and other one, and he says, and he himself had helped pave the way, because he had believed. He raised his voice and his arm, intoxicated by the first vision. He handed over everything, even his free will, even his peace of mind. Uh, I just found those like aspects just very like powerful because we're seeing the the consequences of people's choices of supporting Trump and supporting a fascist, and these people are so, but it's so different from, in a way, because I don't know, like maybe it's the same, maybe it's different. All I know is that if you voted for him a second time, you knew exactly what you were supporting. But did they? Do they? Because I just feel like they're just so fanatical. They're just so caught up in the in this cult mentality that they don't even understand what they're believing on some level, maybe. But I know that many of them do. They know they're being racist. They're being disgusting fascist Nazis, and they're okay with that. So there's many of them that are okay with that, and there's probably some who may not even fully understand, and they're not going to understand it until after. And people are going to look at us in the future, and they're going to be disgusted with us. So, anyways, the other aspect of this that I found very interesting was Janusz, because he is a Polish prisoner slash slave, and yet at the beginning of this book, he doesn't really understand the full extent of what his life is like, because he was so desperate to escape the Russians. His mother like put the fear of Russians in him so much that he ran straight into the Germans' arms, not realizing the consequences of that, and not fully understanding what the Germans were doing to the Polish folks, to Poland, what was going on inside of Poland because of Germany and all of that. He didn't fully understand this, or at least said it. He saw that he was being fed, that he had a roof over his head, he had warmth finally, and that's all he saw at them in that moment. I do think that as time went by, he did understand that he was a prisoner, but because the family that ran this farm was nice to him, he didn't fully understand that they were also part of the people who were oppressing people. Um, and so it wasn't until they are escaping that he realizes the full extent, because at one point they are passing concentration camp prisoners just standing along the side of the road, and he realizes what's going on. And Ilsa's father says, Janusz, I didn't know, I never imagined. And he replies, you must have known something. And that just like broke my heart, because after this moment, he stops telling his stories because he's dealing with the realities of war and what Germany was doing to his people, and the fact that he ran he escaped with a German family, um, who's just silent, sort of kind of silent to the atrocities and that were happening around them, and it's just heartbreaking to see that, um, and and Elsa's father, and the mother are end up talking, and they say, even if we win this war, he said, we'll have to pay the debt in hell. Debt. It was an easy word to say, but it did not bode well for the future. So, it's definitely a book talking about how history, about how we can stand aside while things are happening because of fear, because we don't fully understand the full extent of what's happening, etc. And yet, when you're in the middle of trying to survive, that moral and ethical qualms gets distorted because you're trying to protect your family. And that's a lot of what we see when they finally do start to escape, the process of escaping. Um, we're seeing them dealing with like, how far will you go to protect your family? How far will you go to make sure that they can eat and survive, etc. So I will say that I only give this book 3 stars because I was misled as to what this book was going to be, and I thought it was going to be about these two families intersecting and like trying to survive together as a unit because they needed to combine their resources, but that was not the case. And we don't see these families intersect until like the very end of the book. And I was just like, well, that was just long. We could have just, it could have just been all these two families surviving, and I would have been fine with them not intersecting at all, because they both had something to say through their stories. And I think it was both very important at this, but I think I shouldn't have read the synopsis, so I should have just read it. And I probably would have given this book 5 stars because what this author was doing and saying through these family stories was just is very powerful. But because it just didn't go the way I thought it, like, but they don't start leaving, like the Ilse family don't start actually like escaping until like 50% of through the book. We're seeing a lot of like of the before, like, and during, like, what how they viewed Hitler before the war actually like fully started, how their support or indifference impacted their lives during the war, and then their escape out of it and all that. That is really what it's about. So I appreciate what the author was doing, and I would definitely reread this, but reread it in a way that without that synopsis in my head.